Wednesday morning, football fans. Thanks for getting up and on with us here on Birds 365. You got your Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen. And John, after a day of well wishes and good thoughts and prayers, seems to be some good news from Cincinnati with the recovery of Damar Hamlin. And that has certainly brought the National Football League to a halt with what transpired on the field just 30 some odd hours ago in Cincinnati. It's absolutely grabbed everyone's attention, and everyone is thinking about it and sending prayers that way. And it has had a serious effect on the National Football League, and understandably so. For those just getting up, streaming in, and hearing us to start your day, yesterday, one of Hamlin's relatives spoke to the media and said that his oxygen intake is down from 100% to 50%. So he's breathing more on his own. He is still intubated and still not 100% with it, but a very good sign, first really good sign we've had since the incident on Monday Night Football. And I think that has eased some tension around the National Football League.
Yeah, a little bit, and I think there was even on the field, as scary as it was, the fact that his heartbeat was restored was a testament. That was the first good sign. I mean, that you got to get to people who suffer those types of cardiac events very, very quickly, and the fact that it was restored as quickly as it was the first good sign, and then talking to a couple cardiologists the last few days, which is something you never want to do, but you got to do as much research as possible. This is typical of these types of events, and they want to put you in that medically induced state so the body can heal. So all of this is positive news, and I think so many people want immediacy and hope it's kind of not how it works. So this is all good news, and the fact that everything is progressing as it should and progressing nicely, and hopefully it continues in that direction. um but yeah, I mean, it's difficult from a football perspective, first of all, because nobody wants to talk about football, and it puts itself in its place. And I don't know, I'll be the first to say, raise my hand, Jody. I don't know how you deal with it, other than unfortunately, everybody in their life goes through difficult things, and life never stops. I don't know. It's going to move forward. It's nice that people took a pause, and it's nice that everyone came together, and I think that's a positive sign. But I don't know, other than there were a couple teams, because of the Thursday night game, obviously Jacksonville, and sorry, that's the last one, because of the Saturday games. They're a little bit early, and there's certain teams doing certain things, and I know Mike Tomlin wanted to talk because of the Pittsburgh connection. But most teams don't do much on Tuesday anyway, so it was a little bit of a step back. Um, Got to prepare for Week 18. I don't know any other way, to be honest. Um, People are advocating shutting down the season. I don't pushing back because you have the extra week. I guess that could be an equation, but it's a very difficult circumstance.
It is, and yours truly was on WIP both of the last 2 nights, so I've had a chance to interact with some fans of the National Football League, mostly Eagle fans, but just football fans in general. And I've been a little bit surprised by the lack of understanding from some fans just about life in general. John McMullen's got his opinions. Jody McDonald's got his opinions. Everybody has their own opinions on a lot of things in life. But dealing with a situation like what transpired Monday night in Buffalo is also one of them. And not everyone is going to feel the same on the same timeline. That I've been surprised by people thinking that because they have an opinion on how this can and should be dealt with going forward, that that's the way it must happen because you think so. And that if anyone disagrees with your timeline, well, then what are you thinking about? The country is soft. We can't prioritize it. We have to drop everything and just give all. Different people have different ways of dealing with different things in their life. And luckily, we're not to the stage of grief. If you consider grief the loss of life, I'm grieving for Damar Hamlin. So it's just the definition of the word grief. But people deal with this in different stages and differently. And I think everyone really has to just take a deep breath and realize that you've got to be able to work with others. You've got to be able to understand the emotions and the feelings of others and the way that they deal with things, because not everybody's the same. If it was general cookie cutter, put the hours into it and we'll figure it out this way, that'd be real nice. That's just not it.
No.
And different people in the NFL have different emotions.
Forget about this situation. That's every situation. Yeah. That's why I say social media is, the downfall of a great empire. History tells us all empires fall. We don't realize our empire's falling because we're in the middle of it. People think it's their way or the highway, and everything from the smallest subject to the biggest subject. If you don't think the way certain people think, they just shut you off. They say you're not relevant, you're dumb, you're stupid, blah blah blah. Yeah, if you could fix that, Jody, you would have us in a big bounce back as a society. It ain't happening. That's one of the things about social media. There's a lot of good about social media. Don't get me wrong, but there's a ton of bad, and one of it is that people want to be in echo chambers. They want to be comfortable. They want to be around with people who think the same way they think about everything. And again, from the most important topic down to the least important topic, like football, like sports. Sports is my living. Sports is your living. It's very important to us, but I'm savvy enough to realize, guess what? In the real world, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. But it means a lot to a lot of people as a form of escapism. But you see the visceral hate of certain fan bases against other fan bases or players or this or that. If you had you'd be a very rich man, Jody McDonald. I'd be a very rich man if we could solve that problem. Because that is a big problem.
And under the fear of being canceled, we will put forth our opinions here today. If you're tuned to us live and or watching it after the fact on tape thereafter, we're going to work under the assumption you're a big sports fan. We're not trying to minimize what happened in Monday night in Buffalo. And John and I both have already been on record and will continue to say we're rooting for this young man to recover and be able to restart his life, whether that is in the National Football League or whatever else he decides to do. First things first, he needs to get healthy. So we're sending all best wishes and prayers his way. But life does go on, and it goes on for everybody else. And we are Birds 365. So we're going to talk about what transpires next in the National Football League and how that affects the local football team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Immediate reaction, John. The NFL came out yesterday and said they are not, as of right now, going to have any plans in place to restart the game between the Bengals and the Bills. That the NFL is moving on with week 18 as scheduled, and they are going to continue to wait to see how things play out. And it is tied to Hamlin's health. Don't kid yourself. As to what they're going to do with the game that was not finished. It doesn't have an immediate effect on the Philadelphia Eagles. They're in the NFC, and this is not an NFC thing. It's an AFC thing because the Bills and the Bengals were both in the running for potential number one seed. We understand the whole potential number one seed thing because that's exactly what the Eagles are dealing with the game that they need to win against the Giants and lock it up on Sunday. So it doesn't have an immediate effect on the Eagles, but it could thereafter because, as you mentioned, people are just throwing out possibilities. This is not coming from the league. This is coming from NFL insiders, people with supposedly valued opinions about the National Football League. Will they think about pushing the playoffs back by a week? If they really believe that that game needs to be played, that they can't determine the playoff order in the AFC if everyone isn't playing the same amount of games, that's when it does start to affect the Philadelphia Eagles if they're going to redo the schedule. John, it might not be the worst thing in the world for the Philadelphia Eagles if they went down that road, because that would be another week of recovery right now when the Eagles need that week of recovery for Jalen Hurts' shoulder, for the abdomen of Lane Johnson, for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's kidney. If this is actually the way it plays itself out and there isn't a that they feel the need to play that last game, they would have to play it next week and push the entire playoffs back. I think it's a bit of a drastic solution, but I think you kind of said it, and I feel the same. It's not a 0% chance. I think it is something that will be given consideration. Can they do something as drastic as that around the NFL?
Well, from a football perspective, I mean, one of the complications and again, I feel the need to say from a football perspective, I'm only talking about football. That was a very important game. I mean, that was an extraordinarily important game. You could go no contest if it were, Cleveland, Las Vegas, or whomever, and say, all right, we're not going to play the game. We're going to move on. Buffalo was in a position to have the number one seed. In theory, today, Kansas City, I believe, has usurped them for the number one seed. Cincinnati, obviously, if they went on to win the game, would have tied Buffalo in the standings. So it was a very important game from a football perspective and a seeding perspective. So I don't know how you just say we're not going to play the game, no contest, especially if Kansas City goes on to win and they get the number one seed. All of a sudden you're affecting competitive balance. That's all this league ever talks about, competitive balance, this and that. That is a dramatic shift in the AFC. From the Eagles' perspective in the NFC, I mean, yes and no. It's not going to affect Week 18. We're going to play Week 18 from all indications. I've seen no evidence that they're going to stop Week 18 and push that back.
Nope.
So it's going to be played. So you still have the issues this week in that whether Jalen Hurts is on the precipice or if he's truly cleared. So that's not going to help you this week. Now, you get more rest coming up because remember, especially if you win, if you're the Eagles, you still have the bye. So nobody else has the bye, but they get a bye, if that makes sense. But the Eagles still get the extra advantage if they're the number one seed. And more time, the better, I guess, when you're talking about specific injuries, especially C.J. Gardner-Johnson would be the best example. Lane Johnson, I think that's not getting better. He's just playing through it. You can wait as long as you want. He's just playing through it. So I guess it helps a little bit in certain instances. I would say the same about Jalen Hurts, but he's got to play. He's got to play in Week 18. So I don't know how, playing and then getting a little bit more rest after that. I don't know how that affects. Bottom line is you got to get the number one seed if you're the Eagles because you still have the advantage. It's still a huge advantage. I mean, that's the key to this whole thing. The Eagles obviously don't have a ton of momentum. Nick said that, admitted that at his press conference on Monday. But, number one seed, Super Bowl goes through Philadelphia. That's a difficult spot for anybody. And we
It
saw
is.
it in 2017.
It truly is, but the Eagles want that spot. We've used the phrase "the window is open" on this show many a time over the last couple of months, and the Eagles certainly, at least in my opinion, have to look at this season as that, an open window and the possibility to go to Super Bowl. You open up the season 13-1. How do you not think of it as an opportunity to potentially get another championship? So they need to act accordingly. We just don't know what those actions are just yet, because right now no one is acting around the National Football League. There were no Happy Tuesdays yesterday. The NFL rightfully came to a stop. It will start motion again today for the upcoming weekend games, and it's a huge one between the Giants and the Eagles with a lot on the line. John and I are going to talk about it. We're going to bring in two good guests to help us do just that. Our usual Wednesday contributor, Mike Gill from 93.7, the Sports Bash down the shore, is going to jump in coming up in just a couple of minutes. And then in hour number two, your bud and ours, Jeff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com is also going to join us today. So Eagle heavy show today. There are National Football League issues to be dealt with, and then that trickles down to the Philadelphia Eagles. Johnny and I will be talking about it with Mike Gill from the Sports Bash 93.7 ESPN down the shore. He's coming up next. And a little bit later, hour number two, Jeff Mosher will jump in with us here on Birds 360.